Hey guys, in today's video I bring you a shocking and impossible to ignore story. Let's meet Selah Whitmore, a nurse who died for 10 minutes and 25 seconds and was taken to a spiritual realm where she had a direct encounter with Jesus Christ. There, he revealed frightening truths about the future of humanity, including the rise of the Antichrist, the great deception already underway, and the persecution to come. But what she saw will change everything you think about the world. So, before we start, leave your like, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any content like this, and activate the bell to receive all notifications. Now, get ready, because this revelation will shake your certainty. My name is Selah Whitmore. Before that night, I was just another ordinary person, living my routine without worrying about the mysteries of eternity. I wasn't a non-believer, but I didn't go deeper either. I went to church every now and then. I said quick prayers when I needed to, but I had never felt anything truly supernatural. That has changed. The night I died wasn't just any night. It wasn't just a traumatic event or a moment of biological weakness. It was a calling so real that it ripped me from this world and launched me into the unknown. What I'm about to tell you is not a delusion, a dream, or an exaggerated interpretation of a medical experiment. What happened to me was real. In the days following my return, I wrestled with this truth. I wanted to believe that everything was just the effect of pain, a game of my subconscious, but the memory remained too clear, too sharp, to be reduced to a hallucination. I saw, I heard, I felt it, but telling this is not easy. Have you ever tried to explain colors to someone who was born blind? Have you ever tried to describe a melody to someone who has never heard a sound? That's how I feel trying to find words for what happened to me. I know there will be skeptics. I know that some will call me a lunatic, that it was all a game of the brain failing. I don't blame anyone who thinks like that. If I hadn't experienced it, I might not have believed it either, but that doesn't matter. What matters is that I saw it, and now I know. I know there is a kingdom beyond this world. I know there is a greater purpose. I know there is an invisible war going on around us. I know there is a deception spreading like a fog, blinding the eyes of many, and I know time is running out. Jesus brought me back for a reason, to alert, to prepare those who want to listen, to tell the truth before it's too late. I saw what's coming. I have seen what is about to unfold before us, and what's to come will change everything. In the months leading up to that night, something inside me began to change. At first, it was just a slight discomfort, as if something was out of place. Wrong, but invisible. I continued my routine as normal. Long shifts at the hospital, trips to the grocery store, quick calls to my younger sister, but the feeling that something was about to happen grew every day. I started to have a restless sleep. I woke up in the middle of the night, in a cold sweat with a feeling I couldn't describe. My heart was beating fast, as if something was calling me, something I couldn't see but knew was there. It was a silent, insistent call, impossible to ignore. Then came the dreams. At first, they were just quick images, a city shrouded in darkness, soulless eyes watching me from the crowd, symbols I didn't understand. Over time, the dreams became more vivid. I heard voices murmuring things I couldn't understand. I saw shadows moving, mixing with the artificial light of the streets, always at the edge of my field of vision. And, in the midst of it all, a voice began to emerge. Selah, get ready. It was a whisper at first, but every time I tried to ignore it, it came back stronger, more urgent. At the hospital, I started to notice that the people around me were different. Patients who were previously affable began to become irritable for no reason. Coworkers avoided eye contact. Some seemed distant, as if their minds were elsewhere. Once, an elderly patient held my hand tightly and murmured, "You see it too, don't you? Something's coming." I was freezing. In the supermarket, I noticed strangers watching me, not in an ostentatious way, but with that long, empty look, as if they knew something that I didn't. And then there was that day, which marked my certainty that something big was about to happen. I was in the hospital parking lot, about to get into my car, when a man, dressed in an impeccable suit, pulled up next to me. His face was ordinary, but his eyes, they were dull. He smiled at me, but the smile had no warmth, no humanity. "You feel it, don't you?" he said, casually, as if we were talking about the weather. My throat dried up. "Me feel what?" He tilted his head, still smiling. "The calling." Then, Without anything else, he walked away and disappeared into the crowd. It was the first time I admitted to myself something was happening, something I didn't understand, something that was already waiting for me. The night it all happened, I was exhausted. It had been a long day at the hospital, emergencies, agitated patients, machines beeping nonstop. My body ached from walking back and forth, and my head throbbed with accumulated fatigue. All I wanted was to go home, take a hot shower, and pass out in bed. The parking lot was practically empty when I left the hospital. The yellowish lights cast distorted shadows on the concrete floor. The sound of my own footsteps echoed in the open space, and a cold breeze cut through the night. That's when I heard it. Footsteps behind me. My heart quickened, and I quickened my pace. My car was just a few meters away, but before I could reach it, something brutally pulled me back. I fell hard, my body hitting the hard floor. The shock of the fall took my breath away, and for a moment, everything was confusing. Lights flashing, the smell of gasoline in the air, voices murmuring, and then the pain started. The first kick came in the ribs, eliciting an involuntary groan from me. The second, in the head, made everything spin. There were 3 of them. I didn't see their faces clearly, but I felt the hate with each blow. It was no ordinary robbery. They didn't ask for money. They didn't try to take anything. They wanted to hurt me. My mind screamed to react, but my body no longer obeyed. Each impact made reality dissolve a little more. The metallic taste of blood filled my mouth, and then everything stopped. The pain disappeared. The cold of the night turned into a gentle heat, and the sound of angry voices drifted away like a distant echo. That's when I realized I was out of my body. Somehow, I saw everything from above. My body was lying motionless, surrounded by attackers who now looked like shapeless figures. Time has become something strange, as if it were trapped between seconds stretched out indefinitely. It was then that the light appeared. It didn't come as a sudden flash, but as a growing presence, something I felt before I even saw it. A bright, intense light, but one that didn't hurt the eyes. It seemed to pulse, breathe, carry a deep, unfathomable knowledge. It was at that moment that I realized something much bigger was happening. And then, I heard the voice. "Selah, come." It was just a whisper, but it resonated inside me like thunder, and I knew without a shadow of a doubt that my journey was just beginning. The light enveloped me in a way that human words cannot describe. It wasn't just brightness. It wasn't just heat. It was conscience. I felt like I was being welcomed, absorbed by something infinitely bigger than me. The fear disappeared, as if it had never existed. The pain, the memories of my body lying in the parking lot, the sound of the blows that once echoed in my ear, everything disappeared. I floated, or rather, was taken. There was no gravity there, no up or down, just that pulsating, living light around me. Little by little, my vision began to adjust, and I realized that I was passing through a space unlike anything I had ever seen before. Time didn't exist there. There was no past, present, or future. Everything was now. Every speck of light around me seemed to contain knowledge, wisdom, love. They weren't just colors vibrating in space, they were thoughts, they were truths. I was immersed in something much greater than my understanding could reach. And then, I heard it again. Selah. It was a voice that did not come from outside, but from inside, within. It was a voice that carried all the power of the universe, but at the same time, all the love that could exist. I turned around, and he was there. Jesus. There was no doubt. None. I had never seen him before, but I knew. He wasn't like the images I had seen in paintings or movies. He was light and fire and truth and love all at the same time. His presence filled every part of my being. Your eyes. I'll never forget those eyes. They were like living flames, but they didn't burn. They revealed. I was cleaning up. Before him, everything I was exposed. Every mistake, every selfish thought, every moment of doubt. But at the same time, I felt completely accepted. I fell to my knees. Not because I thought about doing it, but because it was the only possible reaction before him. Get up, Selah. His voice was soft, but unquestionable. It was a command and an invitation at the same time. I stood up, shaking. He looked at me with infinite seriousness, and then said, "You were brought here to see and witness. What I will show you will change everything." And then, the space around us began to change. And I saw it. The light around us began to rotate. as if space itself was shaping itself. I felt a pull, as if being carried forward without moving a muscle. Suddenly, I wasn't there anymore. I was looking at Earth, but it wasn't Earth as we know it. It was as if I was seeing two realities at the same time. The physical world is something much deeper, hidden. First, I saw the cities shining, large metropolises pulsing with life, but behind this facade, a dense darkness it crept like black smoke, infiltrating buildings, streets, people. The world was being prepared for something. And then, he showed me the leader. It was a man, young, charismatic, with a serene appearance and a sweet voice. He spoke to crowds with a confidence that was impossible to ignore. He promised peace, prosperity, and unity. His image appeared on huge screens around the world, and people, they adored him. They smiled, applauded, celebrated his words. But then Jesus showed me what was behind it. Behind that flawless figure, there was something monstrous, something that I couldn't completely define, but that made my soul shiver. It was pure darkness, a void of all that is good, a hatred against God in its most absolute form. He will deceive many, Selah. Jesus' voice was filled with sorrow. I saw governments handing over power to him voluntarily. We religious leaders bowing, accepting his words as if they came from God himself. I saw crowds celebrating the arrival of a new era, but it was everything is a lie. And then I saw what happened with those who did not bow. First, they were called intolerant, fanatics, extremists. They were ridiculed, excluded. Afterwards, in the restrictions, they could no longer buy, sell, work. And then came the prisons, the tortures, the deaths. I saw empty churches transformed into museums of a dead faith. I saw Bibles burned in public squares. I saw families separated, children ripped from their parents, arms because refused the new system. They will think they are doing the world good by persecuting mine. My heart sank. But there is a remnant. And then, Jesus showed me something that filled me with hope. Had small hidden groups, gathered in simple places, sometimes even underground. They prayed, read the word, they strengthened each other. Their faces were marked by suffering, but their eyes shone with true faith. They will not give in, they will be ready. And then, the vision changed again. Jesus showed me something even scarier. The scene around us dissolved, and suddenly I was faced with something that shook me to my core. The world was changed. It wasn't just the influence of a deceitful leader. There was a system built to control absolutely everything and everyone. I saw entire interconnected networks, a flow of information being collected and analyzed in real time. People were completely inserted within this new system, their lives depending entirely on technology. Their eyes, always focused on screens that glowed with promises of safety and comfort, did not notice the invisible chains that bound them. The world believes it is freer than ever before, Jesus said, his voice thick with sadness. But this freedom was a lie, had a new global financial system. There was no more physical money. Every purchase, every transaction, every movement was recorded and monitored. To do anything, you had to have a brand, a code, an identification that linked them completely to the system. I saw people trying to resist, trying to live outside of that control, but they were excluded, blocked, invisible to the world. Without this identification, they could not buy food, pay bills, rent a house, travel. And then, Jesus showed me the worst. The system was not just external. He was being implanted within people. I saw huge lines of people receiving an invisible seal, something that completely connected them to this new global order. It was announced as a revolutionary advance, as something that would make life simpler, safer, more efficient. But behind that, it was a prison. A group of people refused. I saw men and women being persecuted like criminals for not accepting the brand. They were hunted, dragged to re-education centers, forced to choose between survival and their faith, and those who resisted until the end were executed. The chase was fast and brutal. It was no longer something hidden. It was open. It was accepted. They will say it is for the good of humanity, Jesus continued. They will say that those who resist are enemies of peace, but you have seen the truth. Selah, you must warn them. My heart beat uncontrollably. I saw a whole world diving into total control and no one noticed. But all is not lost. Jesus raised his hand, and in an instant, the vision changed. Now, I saw something different, something that rekindled a flame inside me. One unexpected movement was emerging. The scene before me changed again. After seeing the advance of absolute control and merciless persecution, Jesus showed me something no one expected. We young people standing up, rejecting the system, refusing the lies. They did not accept diluted doctrines. They did not conform to a lukewarm faith. I saw them gathered in unlikely places, abandoned buildings, dense forests, dark caves, but they had something the world no longer had, a burning fire within them. They were not interested in empty religions or meaningless rituals. They cried out to God with all their hearts, and I felt the sky move in response to them. Saw healings happening, miracles manifesting in the midst of persecution. I saw a faith that was not supported by human structures, but by something infinitely greater. They were despised, discredited, marginalized, Jesus said, but I know them. I am raising them up. They were few compared to the crowd who followed the system blindly, but your strength did not come from numbers, but from the Holy Spirit. We homes being opened in secret, offering refuge to the persecuted, saw messages being transmitted in a hidden manner, ensuring that the truth continued to be spread, saw prayers being offered with tears and cries, and heaven responding with power. While the world hates you, I strengthen you. The persecution against these young people was fierce, but the more they were attacked, the more they multiplied. I saw armed guards breaking into meetings, destroying everything they could. But even with arrests and executions, they didn't stop. They didn't just talk about faith, they lived the faith. And then, the vision changed again. We armies gathering, preparing for a final confrontation. I saw nations joining forces, deceived by spirits working behind the scenes. They believed they were fighting for something fair, but they were going against God without realizing it. They will rise up against me, Jesus said, and his voice sounded like thunder. The Antichrist and his false prophet gathered followers. The darkness seemed to be winning, but then the sky opened, and I saw it. I saw Jesus returning, and this time, he did not come as a lamb. He came like warrior king. The vision before me expanded, and I saw the sky opening as if an invisible curtain was torn from end to end. The whole world stopped, time seemed frozen, and all eyes turned upward. The light that appeared was unlike anything I had ever seen. It wasn't just brilliance, it was pure glory, absolute power. It was like the universe itself recognized the one who was coming. And then, Jesus appeared. But he was no longer the man in plain clothes who walked among the disciples. He was riding on a white horse. His clothing shone with an impossible brilliance, and his gaze was like living fire. He didn't come to preach. He came to reign. The armies of the earth gathered against him as if they still had a chance. Armed men, nations united under the Antichrist, advanced technologies, all ready to challenge the creator of the universe. They think they can fight me, Jesus said, and his voice sounded like thunder echoing throughout existence. The forces of darkness. They did not flee, they did not hide, but they advanced arrogantly. The Antichrist was among them, raising his voice with empty promises, declaring that he would win. I saw crowds who they adored him, blind until the last moment. But then, Jesus just spoke. A single word came out of his mouth, and everything he finished. Armies crumbled like dust in the wind. The Antichrist and his false prophet were plucked from the crowd and released in the lake of fire without warning, without judgment, without delay. The truth prevailed like thunder, and the lie was crushed in an instant. The whole world trembled. The sun darkened. What's left of the old system collapsed. And then, real peace has begun. We, the kingdom of God, being established. I saw the earth being restored. I saw a world no fear, no oppression, no corruption. I finally saw people books. Behold, I make all things new, Jesus declared. And I knew, in the depths of my being, that the war was over. But then, I was called back. Selah, time is short. Go back and prepare them. Before I could say anything, before I could even process the enormity of what I had witnessed, I was pulled back hard. The light disappeared. The heat is gone. And I woke up. The shock of coming back was like being ripped from a vivid dream and thrown brutally back into reality. My body felt rigid, as if I had been frozen and suddenly thawed. The first sound I heard was the accelerated beeping of machines around me. I was in a hospital bed, surrounded by faces that seemed to not believe what they were seeing. Doctors, nurses, all paralyzed. Their expressions oscillated between relief and pure astonishment. A woman in a white coat, who I later discovered was Dr. Naomi Calloway, looked at the heart monitor, then at me, then at the monitor again, as if he couldn't trust what his own eyes were registering. That's not possible. My breathing was heavy, and my limbs felt as heavy as lead. I had returned to my body, but I was no longer the same. Everything I had seen, heard, felt on the other side was still there, sharp in my mind. I looked at my own hands as if they were something foreign, as if they were no longer mine. My heart raced. How was I alive? At that moment, Elijah Foster, my friend and pastor, rushed into the room. His expression was that of someone who already knew that something extraordinary had happened. But still, he was visibly shaken. "Selah," he said, almost breathless. You died. Your heart stopped for over 10 minutes. There is no explanation for why you are here now, none. But I knew. I knew exactly because had returned. The voice of Jesus still echoed inside me. Prepare them. Time is short. The feeling was as if an immense weight had been placed on my shoulders. But it wasn't a weight of despair. It was a calling. The doctors did all the tests possible. They checked my brain, my heart, my breathing. They argued among themselves, exchanging confused looks, looking for some logical answer. There wasn't. My body must have been damaged by the brutal blows, by the time without oxygen, but there were no consequences. Nothing. And then came the inevitable question. "Selah." Elijah walked over, holding my hand. "What happened to you?" I closed my eyes, still feeling the presence of the sky within me. I saw, and for the first time, I understood the true weight of the words that would follow. I saw what's coming. The following days were a whirlwind. My body was alive, but my mind was still stuck in eternity. I was trying to get used to the simple fact of being back, of breathing, of feeling the weight of the physical world around me. But at the same time, everything felt different. The colors seemed duller, the sounds more muffled. The real world seemed less real than what I had seen on the other side. Elijah stayed by my side the entire time, asking questions I didn't yet know how to answer. The Dr. Naomi Calloway, also constantly returned to my room, as if trying to find some semblance of a scientific explanation for what had happened to me. But something was different about her. On the third day after my resurrection, she sat next to me and hesitated before speaking. "I am a woman of science," she began, choosing her words carefully. "I don't believe in miracles. But you should be dead, or at the very least with irreversible brain damage." I just watched her, waiting. She swallowed hard. For the first time, she looked scared. "Selah, while your heart was still, were you aware of what was happening?" Looking at her, I realized that I wanted to believe, but something inside her still fought against it. I saw what's coming. My own voice sounded strange to me, as if it were no longer the same person speaking. "And you feel it too, don't you? You know something is wrong in the world." The doctor turned pale. Her eyes widened a little, as if she knew exactly what I was talking about but was afraid to admit it. She didn't respond. She just got up and left the room. It was at that moment that I realized something essential. I couldn't tell this story to just anyone. Testify only to those who are ready to listen. Jesus' words echoed within me. And then, the question I had been trying to avoid finally asserted itself. What should I do now? The answer came as clear as the blue sky of a cloudless morning. I should warn. I should prepare those who had ears to hear. But that meant I would have to face something even more dangerous than death. The world wouldn't accept what I had to say. And worse, there would be those who would try to silence me. In the days following my recovery, I noticed something strange. My very existence seemed like a nuisance to some people. It wasn't just curious looks or whispers from those who found out about my case at the hospital. There was real resistance, almost hostility, to what I could say. At the hospital, the doctors avoided mentioning my miracle. It was as if they were afraid to admit that something inexplicable had happened. I saw it in their eyes. The conflict, the refusal to accept that maybe there was something beyond science. Even Elijah, who believed in me from the first moment, was tense. "You need to be careful," he told me one night while we were sitting on the porch of his house. "What you saw isn't something people will accept easily. You know that, don't you?" I knew, but there was no going back. The world needs to know to answer. People need to be prepared. He rubbed his face with his hands and sighed. It was the weight of truth, and then the first threats began. At first, they were subtle. My phone would ring, and when I answered it, there was no one on the other end. Just heavy, cold, empty breathing. Anonymous messages arrived in my email, with cryptic phrases like, "Stop while you can," or "Don't ruin the plan." I ignored it. But then, something worse happened. One night, as I was driving home, I noticed a car following mine. No matter which path I took, he was always there. My mind was screaming at me not to panic. Maybe it was just coincidence. Maybe it was just someone going the same way as me. But then, the car's lights blinked strangely, like a warning. That's when I knew. They were watching me. I parked in front of my house, but didn't get out of the car right away. I watched in the rearview mirror, feeling my heart beat like a drum. The other vehicle stopped a few meters behind. Time passed slowly. Then, their car door opened. A man came out. He didn't say anything, didn't make any aggressive gestures. It just stood there, looking at me, as if he knew something I didn't know. My breath caught in my throat. I could get out of the car. I could face him. I could ask him what he wanted. But something told me that this was just the beginning. Something told me that it wouldn't be easy to share the truth, and the battle had already started. That night, I sat in the car for what seemed like an eternity. The man standing a few meters away didn't move, just watched me. It was a heavy, dense presence, as if it carried something beyond a simple physical threat. Every part of my being told me not to go out, not to expose myself, but at the same time, a fire started to grow inside me. If you're afraid, they've already won. The voice came from inside, strong and firm. I knew who it was. I took a deep breath and opened the car door. The man didn't move. He just tilted his head slightly, as if he was analyzing my reaction. He was tall, dressed in a dark suit that contrasted with the dim street lighting. Your eyes? They had no light. It wasn't just coldness. It was empty. I took a step forward. My heart was pounding, but my determination was greater. "What do you want?" My voice was firm, without tremors. The man smiled, a soulless, joyless smile. "Selah Whitmore." He spoke my name as if it were a sentence. I didn't respond. "You should forget it." My skin crawled. "Forget what? What did you see?" My stomach turned. They knew. "It's not real," he continued. "It's just a delusion, a deception of your mind. But if you insist, if you try to spread this lie, there will be consequences." My body tensed. I knew this would happen. The world doesn't want the truth. The world rejects the truth. I looked him straight in the eyes. What if it's real?" My voice came out stronger than I expected. "What if that's exactly what people need to hear?" His smile disappeared. The mask fell. "Then you choose the wrong path. Without anything else." He turned around, calmly walked to the car and got in. The engine roared into the night, and the vehicle disappeared into the darkness. I stood there, feeling the weight of that interaction. They were warning me. They wanted to shut me up. But now I knew, more than ever, that I couldn't stay silent. I returned home, my hands still shaking. I locked myself in the room and knelt on the floor. Jesus, what do I do? There was absolute silence for a moment. But then, a deep peace came over me, the same peace I felt in his presence. And then, the words came, clear as day. "You already know." And I knew. I needed to speak. It didn't matter the cost. Why, time was short. If you like this beautiful spiritual testimony, leave a like, comment on your impressions, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to activate the notification bell to watch each new video and help us spread this message to a greater number of people. Until next time.